Hello and welcome to the Septage Hauler and Transporter Renewal Training. I'm Matt Pace and I'm going to be leading you through this training presentation today. Now you may notice that this training is different than those that we've had in previous years, and that I believe is a great thing. Previous trainings required you to attend at specific locations and specific times just to take a class. Ultimately, you had to miss out on part of your workday just to attend a class. Fortunately, technology has allowed us to improve and modify the way in which we deliver this training to you. The only drawback to this type of training is the interaction between you and me. You will not be able to ask me any questions, nor will I be able to respond to anything that you may say. However, if you do have questions, feel free to contact me directly or contact one of our local DEQ offices. So let's go ahead and get started. Today's presentation is going to cover 4 main items, and these items will be applicable to all licensed septage haulers and transporters. The first topic that we'll cover are the rules, or Chapter 645. Not only will we go into discussion about the general layout of the rules or how they're organized, but more specifically, we'll address the items that have recently been brought to my attention. The next topic will be a short discussion on inspecting tanks, whether it's trash tanks, septic tanks, or holding tanks. There's going to be a quick tutorial on a few of the items that should be evaluated when those tanks are cleaned out. The third topic today is going to be about safety, and we don't always think about safety until usually it's too late. So we're going to look at a few simple practices that you can put into place in order to protect you and your employees on the job. The final topic will address the renewal process itself. Each year there's always seems to be confusion about which forms go to which office or which documents are sent where. We're going to go through the step-by-step process on where everything is going to be sent, so ultimately you can renew your license. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. Chapter 645 is organized in 5 different ways. The first contains the general provisions that apply to all septage haulers. The next is the septage storage facilities. Third is land application sites. Fourth is septage treatment facilities. And finally, the final subchapter addresses the fees. Now we're going to look at certain aspects of the rules. We'll pull out certain parts of it and address those things that are common to everyone, and further delve into those issues and talk about those for this renewal workshop. The first thing that we're going to look at is the definition section. 2 definitions are often used, and they're often used incorrectly. Almost they use one for the other when they're 2 totally different terms, and that's the terms of sewage and septage. Sewage means wastewater that generally originates as human waste from certain activities, including using toilet facilities, washing, bathing, preparing foods, and washing laundry. Sewage, as used in this chapter, does not include industrial solids or wastewater, waste from restaurant grease traps, or waste from car wash mud traps. Now, on the other hand, septage means either liquid or solid material removed from a septic tank, aerobic treatment system, holding tank, portable toilet, type 3 marine sanitation device, or similar treatment works that receives only sewage. So it's both solid and liquid material that's removed from the tank. So what's the difference between the 2? Well, sewage is essentially that wastewater that comes from a facility or comes from a home or some type of building and is moved to some sort of storage tank, like a septic tank, a trash tank, something like that. Septage, on the other hand, is the contents of a tank. It's what's removed from the trash tank or from the septic tank. And the difference occurs because septage is the sewage that has undergone a process of treatment, a form of treatment. It's gone through an anaerobic process of treatment. So all of the materials that are found in the sewage are now concentrated and have gone through an anaerobic process. So it's important then to understand that septage must be treated. So whether that's a perfectly functioning conventional subsurface system that goes from the septic tank to lateral lines where treatment occurs. Maybe there's a problem occurring now in the tank, and we remove the contents, we remove the septage from the tank, and it must be treated properly. So we're either going to take that to a land application facility or a sewer plant or something like that to get that treatment. Sticking with general provisions, we'll talk about retention of records. Retention of records. All records required to be maintained by this chapter shall be retained for a period of 3 years and shall be made available to the DEQ upon request. So any type of log that you're required to keep or records that you're required to keep for a particular type of facility, not only do you have to keep those, you have to maintain them for 3 years, and then also make them available when it's requested. There's going to be certain times of the year where an inspection is going to be required. And one of the first things that our local offices are going to request when they perform that inspection are the records that you've been keeping. So you've got to make sure that you've got your records. So now we've moved on to the licenses section, particularly the licensee's duties. And one of the duties required for somebody that holds a septage hauler and transporter license is the requirement to maintain a daily log. So the licensee shall maintain a daily log for each registered vehicle. The licensee may keep copies of manifests or invoices in lieu of maintaining a log as long as they include the required information. The log shall include the following. Now this is the required information: the total volume of septage pumped for the day and taken to storage or disposal, and taken from storage to the ultimate disposal site. It also contains the name or the number for the storage or disposal location utilized, as well as the name of the driver of the vehicle. So you got to keep all of those things. Now, as this rule mentions, the licensee may keep copies of manifests or invoices in lieu of maintaining a log, as long as those invoices or manifests require this information on it. Then you can keep those instead of keeping a daily log. Now, you also have to remember that each vehicle that you have registered with us has to have a log. So whether you've got a daily log in the vehicle or you've got the manifests or invoices for each vehicle, each vehicle is going to have a requirement to keep track of all of these things. So here's a little chart that shows all of those items. Now you may have your own chart worked up, and that's fine. You can use it, provided that it contains all of the information that's required to be kept. So you could see on this first one here, we've entered a date, where it was located, the amount that was pumped, and then the destination section here is where we're taking it. So this one, we took it to the POTW or the publicly owned treatment works. The name of the site was the Worcester Station, and John Driver drove it there. So the next one is a little bit different. We also have to be able to keep track. If we have a storage facility that we need to empty out and take it to the final disposal, that's also something that has to be tracked. So you can see here, the next day at the storage facility, 2,000 gallons were removed and then taken to the land app site. That land app site has this permit number, and John Driver again took that load there. So it's important to make sure you keep those daily logs. Still in the license section, we're talking about disposal options. It says septage from holding tanks, portable toilets, or type 3 marine sanitation devices shall be considered and disposed of as sewage at a permitted wastewater treatment facility or at a pre-treatment facility that is permitted by a city operating a pre-treatment program approved by DEQ. All other septage may only be disposed of in a publicly owned wastewater treatment works, at a permitted land app site, in a permitted municipal solid waste landfill, at a permitted septage treatment facility, or at a pre-treatment facility. So what I want to point out with this particular rule is how the septage from holding tanks, portable toilets, and the type 3 marine sanitation devices are different than all the other types. This rule requires disposal only at 2 types of sites: at a sewer plant, at a permitted sewer plant, or at a pretreatment facility. The septage from holding tanks, portable toilets, or Type 3 marine sanitation devices cannot be disposed of at a land app site, or at a landfill, or at a septage treatment facility. The only two places that those types of septage can be disposed of are at a permitted sewer plant or a pretreatment facility. Now we've moved on to the septage storage facility section, talking about how to renew the authorization for those. The unexpired authorizations for the operation of septage storage facilities may be renewed by doing the following by January 15th. Paying the annual fee and either verifying the application information on file at the DEQ is correct or updating the application information. And this same rule will apply to the other types of facilities as well. The land app sites or the treatment facilities. The same type of renewal is going to take place. You're going to pay the fees associated with the renewal, but also make sure that the information that we have on file is still up to date. That means that in order to renew that license, you're not going to be required to complete another application again or submit new drawings or anything like that. You just have to go in and make sure that what we still have is correct. And if it's not, then you update it. All right, so still with the storage facilities, we're going to talk about what happens or what occurs when land application is the final disposal. If lime stabilized septage has been stored for more than 14 days, it must be tested to verify a pH of at least 12 prior to land application, or be restabilized and meet the requirements of 645-5-2. So if you have a storage facility and it's been more than 14 days since you stabilized it the first time, you either have to test it to make sure it still has a pH of 12, which it probably won't, or you have to restabilize it. Now we've moved to the land application section, talking specifically about application rates here. And application rates are extremely important when it comes to land applying septage. The main reason that one of the main reasons at least, that it's so important is because not only do we have rules in place that address land application, but there are also federal rules in the 40 CFR that address septage or biosolids land application. So we have to be able to comply with both of those. Fortunately, Chapter 645, or our rules, are consistent with what's in the CFR. Now, every time an application for a permit to land apply comes in, we come up with, or we identify an application rate, and that application rate is based on a few different things. It's usually based on the soil, but it's also based on the type of vegetation that's going to be grown. The reason that we base it on the type of vegetation is because the vegetation is going to be able to take up the nutrients that are found within the septage, and each type of vegetation is different. It's not the same for every vegetative type. You know, Bermuda grass is going to have a different nitrogen requirement than ryegrass, and it's going to have a different nitrogen requirement than love grass or any other type of grasses or forages. So it's important that we establish what that rate's going to be. So we create that rate based on the information that you provide to us, and then we give you, and it's on the permit, the annual application rate for your land application. And it's extremely important that you do not apply more than what your rate is. See, what happens is if you apply more than what the rate is, then the vegetation itself is not going to have any room to take up the additional nitrogen and phosphorus. So like I said, the vegetation takes up the nitrogen and phosphorus, but only a certain amount. They're only going to use what they need. once they take it up and they use all of that nitrogen and phosphorus, what's left ends up running off the site and going into our receiving waters. And that's not a good thing. So over application is dangerous to our environment. So we want to prevent that from happening. All right, so now we're going to talk about lime when that's added as a stabilization practice before land application. So prior to land application, septage must be stabilized by adding 50 pounds of lime to each 1,000 gallons of septage, mixing thoroughly for at least 30 minutes prior to land application, or at least enough lime to maintain a pH of at least 12 for 30 minutes, and tested to demonstrate that it's maintained a pH of at least 12 for 30 minutes. So you can do it one of two ways. You can add 50 pounds of lime to the 1,000 gallons and mix it thoroughly and call it good, or you can add less than 50 pounds to every 1,000 gallons, mix it thoroughly, then test the pH to make sure you get to 12 and then land apply it. So one of those two things. But it's very important that you become familiar with the process of adding that lime, because the purpose of adding lime to the septage is to remove those pathogens. The high pH kills the bacteria. The lime also breaks down the bacteria, allowing the septage to settle a little bit better, so you get a higher retention of solids by adding lime to the septage. The other purpose of lime is to avoid attracting vectors. We call that vector reduction. And vectors are those organisms that will carry contaminants or carry diseases from one site to a next. So say, for instance, a fly. A fly will come into contact with a contaminant, take that contaminant up, and then fly off somewhere else. That fly is a vector. So dead bacteria don't produce odor as live bacteria do, so that vectors are not alerted to the presence of septage. So if we've got enough lime in there to stabilize the septage, then the vectors will not be attracted to it. So we essentially reduce any vectors that are going to come into contact with it. Now, fortunately for us, the lime does not change the nutrient content of the septage, meaning that it's not going to increase or reduce the amounts of nitrogen or phosphorus. It remains pretty stable. Lime, it has to be added properly, and this is where trial by error kind of comes into play here. Are you going to add it to the tank before you pump the septic tank? Are you going to inject the lime into your main vacuum line as it's pumping the septic tank out? It doesn't matter how you do it. The important thing is that you get that septage stabilized. The goal is to achieve a pH of 12 for 30 minutes. So however you do that, you could create a liquid slurry with the lime. There are different types of lime that you can use. Be careful, and I want to caution you on using quicklime, because quicklime, although it takes less to achieve that pH of 12, it's still more reactive than hydrated lime, and it releases a lot of heat. So if quicklime is used, you have to take safety precautions. It can cause burns if it gets on moist skin or in your eyes. So you have to include the use of gloves, maybe a respirator, definitely goggles, and any other type of clothing that's going to keep it off your skin. So be aware of your practices in stabilizing that septage with lime. The next thing that we're going to look at is record keeping for land application sites. So any person who land applies septage shall record the following information. And it lists all of the information here. This is straight from the rules. So you have to have the permit number for the site, the date that it was applied, the amount that was applied, and also the amount of lime added to the septage. And then you have to certify this following statement, which says that you have met the rules, you've applied it the right way, and you've stabilized it to the point where vectors are reduced and requirements have been met. So we have a record that we put out that you're able to use, and it's important that you keep these records. Again, I want to reiterate that when we perform inspections, we're going to be asking for copies of records. So the records do two things. One, records will ensure that you're filling the form out the way it's supposed to be filled out. And two, the records are going to tell us whether or not the application rate is being exceeded or not, because that's important. So make sure these records are being kept. If you need this document for your records, I am more than happy to send this document to you, and you can follow the instructions on the screen for getting that. All right, treatment facilities. What are the treatment requirements? If you operate a treatment facility, you're going to get a facility permitted with the sole purpose of treating septage. So septage must be treated as follows. Effluent from the treatment process may be disposed of in accordance with 641, provided the facility generates less than or equal to 5,000 gallons of effluent per day and produces an effluent that has a BOD of not more than 250 milligrams per liter and has a TSS of not more than 150 milligrams per liter. Residuals from the treatment process shall be disposed of at a DEQ permitted municipal solid waste landfill in accordance with Chapter 515. And then any facilities that treat more than 5,000 gallons must receive an individual permit from the Water Quality Division. So if you're going to put together a treatment facility, this is what you have to accomplish. You're going to have to come up with a method from Chapter 641 to dispose of the water, and that water that's being disposed of has to be less than 5,000 gallons a day and meet these analyticals right here, these lab tests. Treatment facilities also require annual testing to be performed. So the permittee must annually test treated effluent for BOD and the TSS unless otherwise specified in the permit. So when we issue a permit, we'll tell you what you have to test for. And then records also have to be kept. So the permittee shall record the following information: the date and the volume of septage processed by the facility, the date and volume and location of final disposal of residuals, any maintenance performed on the facility, and the results of any analyses of the treated effluents. Got to keep track of all that. All right, so the next section that we're going to move to is tank inspection. And I understand that not every licensed septage hauler or transporter cleans out only septic tanks. A lot of them have portable facilities, portable restrooms, holding tanks, other types of facilities. But a majority do clean out septic tanks. And so when pump, rather than just showing up, emptying the tank and leaving, while you have access to that tank, why not help that homeowner or that business owner out by helping them identify some problems that could be occurring? And simply looking at the integrity of the tank while you're there can go a long ways in helping that system owner. And so this is the general layout of systems. So you have a source, usually a house, business, something like that, that goes into a septic tank, and then from the septic tank it goes into conventional pipe and gravel system, or maybe some other type of system, but just for this purpose we've got this diagram on here. But specifically we're going to be talking about the septic tank. So the first thing that you want to do when you're at the site, as you're maybe trying to figure out where the septic tank is at, or you've got somebody trying to access that tank, take some time to visit with the homeowner. Not only is that good customer service to kind of visit with that customer, establish a rapport with that customer, but many times they'll be able to provide some information about what could be causing problems with their system. So they could give you information about water use in general. You know, how many loads of laundry are they doing? How many fixtures do they have? How many people live in the house? Many more times than not, septic system failures are a direct result of a water leak. You know, a fixture in the house or water overuse. You know, they're using more water than what the system is designed for. And if we can just ask them some simple questions, maybe we can help them figure out what needs to be done. You know, use less water or fix a leak that's occurring or expand the system that they have. So it's important that it's important to talk to them, and the only way to get this information is to actually talk to that homeowner. All right, so homeowners can tell us whether or not there's been an abrupt increase in flow, or have they all of a sudden started using more water. And you could see here the different things that you can look at when investigating the increased water use. So now let's look at the actual tank itself. So you have dug up the tank, you've pulled the lid. Now obviously if you've already pulled the lid, you're going to have some odor. So maybe prior to pulling that lid off, do you pick up any odors within 10 foot of the tank? You know, that could be an indication of a tank is failing. You know, once you pull that clean out opening off, check the inlet of the tank. Is the inlet stopped up? Is there something that's preventing the flow of water to the tank itself? Is something hung up there? Check the outlet of the tank. That could be the next thing. Is the outlet clogged with solids and or grease? Is the sewage level at the right spot? You just kind of want to get an overall condition of the tank, and since you're having to access the tank to clean it out to begin with, there might as well look at some of these things. Okay, so here's the lid. We pull the lid off. This whole time we're kind of thinking about what could be occurring. Now before you dig down, you know, just kind of take a look around the site, and maybe you get some settling after the system is installed. And what appears to not look that bad, you know, the settling doesn't seem like it's doing anything, but it only takes the shift of a tank, you know, a quarter of an inch or so, and you could have some problems with the way that tank functions. You know, if you get settling long after installation, it could cause some problems. Could prevent the water from making it from the tanks to the disposal field. Is the tank watertight? You know, we mentioned earlier that overuse of water or water leaks is a common occurrence when it comes to causing systems to fail prematurely. But the tank itself, if the septic tank is receiving water from the ground, you know, could be stormwater. Maybe the site's not leveled properly to allow stormwater to drain off. You can see in this tank that we are getting some intrusion of water, and thus causing the tank to fill up faster than it should. Looking at the inlet, you know, is it stopped up? Is there something hung up there that would prevent the water from making it to the tank? Obviously, in this particular picture, there's more problems here than what's going on with the inlet, but nevertheless, you still want to check it. Checking the outlet, you know, are we getting a buildup of solids there? If they're getting a buildup of solids, why are those solids building up? Are they putting too much down the drain? Is the tank so full of solids itself that it just doesn't have the retention capacity to handle all of that? There's lots of questions. Sludge judge the tank. This is an actual sludge judge, but you may have another method of doing this. But you know, finding out how many solids are in the tank will go a long ways in determining whether or not it's operating right. And again, these are just simple things that you can do while you have access to the tank. This is just an unsafe practice. You never want to extend any part of your body down below the lid of the tank. It's a confined space, so you have to be careful there. You don't know what's in there. All right, so that was inspecting tanks. The next section we want to look at is wastewater handling. Obviously, this is a business in which you come into contact with some material, with water that has contaminants in it. Okay, so you want to be safe when handling those contaminants, when handling that water. So the next section here is we want to talk about what we do with that water. How do we stay safe? In order to stay safe, you have to understand what is in that water. So wastewater or sewage, septage, contains water, solids, nitrogen, phosphorus, fats, oils, and greases, organic and inorganic compounds, and then viruses, pathogens, and microorganisms. And that's that last bullet. The pathogens, viruses, and microorganisms that are the dangerous part of this. Okay, and we're talking about less than 1% of the total composition of wastewater. So some of the pathogens of concern. Now this lists all of them, but just to point out a few: Salmonella, E. coli, hepatitis, enterovirus, Cryptosporidium, Giardia. Just some common pathogens that mainly, when you hear these terms, we're referring to sicknesses that are occurring in third world countries. But if not handled the right way, we can actually be infected here. So let's talk about how we can stay safe. So how do you handle wastewater with those particular health hazards? So the Center for Disease Control and Prevention actually has put out a guidance document on controlling the potential risks to workers exposed to Class B biosolids. Kind of an interesting document, but I've pulled out a few of the main things, and they have 3 things recommended to keep people safe. And also remember that nothing is 100% safe. You know, just because you do these three things doesn't mean that you're going to be safe 100% of the time. Still got to use common sense. You know, a small rip in a glove could easily contaminate your skin with one of those bad things. So we're talking about basic hygiene, protective equipment, hygiene stations and training, and good environmental practices. All of these things to keep you and your employees safe. And really pretty cost effective on implementing a lot of these. Basic hygiene, obviously. Wash hands after contact, avoiding or touching body while working, washing your hands prior to eating or drinking or smoking, eat away from activity. So these are really simple things that workers and employees can do to help minimize the exposure to these contaminants. You know, what do they say? A pound of flesh is worth, well, I don't remember what it was, but anyways, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound in flesh. Okay, so it just takes a little bit to stay safe and to get a return on your investment. Nothing worse than having your workers call in sick day after day. So to help eliminate that, follow these simple hygienic practices. Protective equipment, hygiene stations, and training. Personal protective equipment, or PPE. Some examples of this are goggles, face shields, respirators, liquid repellent coveralls, and gloves. Again, things that you can obtain for a relatively small cost, but keep your folks protected for a long time. Hygiene stations like hand washing stations or disinfectants. keeping a bottle of Purell in the truck just in case. You may not be able to wash your hands or remove clothing before getting back to the office or something. Training, set up 2 days a year. Do a biannual training to your staff about the importance of hygienic practices and using equipment and establishing some work standards. Here's some good environmental practices. Ensure the septage is stabilized. We already discussed that when talking about lime. Making sure that you've got enough lime in there to stabilize the septage will ensure that all of that bacteria is killed. Ideally, if you have a land app site, you would want to inject it below the soil or incorporate it somehow. The problem with just opening up the nozzle and leaving it on the site is, one, somebody could come into contact with the splash resulting from applying it, and two, you're going to run the risk of somebody coming into contact with it after you leave. Now, these are not supposed to be public areas or have public access, but there are times when kids might come around. If they see a nice big mud hole, they're going to get in it. All right, so see, these are some more environmental practices. All right, so those are some standards that you can follow to make sure that you're safe when handling the wastewater and doing the job that you're supposed to be doing. So the next section is the renewal process section. So we want to talk about what it's going to take to get your license renewed. Everybody wants to know, what am I supposed to do? Well, here's the opportunity to talk about what you can do. So the first thing is that renewal packets are going to be mailed to you. Now, these renewal packets are going to consist of the application, and it's going to be completed already with the information that we have on file. It's going to include an invoice that will have the amount that you're being charged. So it'll have your license fee. It will have the number of vehicles that you have registered, the disposal sites, if you have a land app or a treatment facility or storage facility, all that's going to be on there. In addition to those two documents, it's going to contain the disposal consent forms. So all of that will be in the packet. What you have to do is you're going to have to verify and complete all of the forms and then return it to the Oklahoma City office with the renewal fee. So once you get all those forms, what you have to do is go through the forms and make sure that all the information is correct, particularly the mailing address. Make sure that we have a good mailing address. So if everything looks good, then you're going to return it to Oklahoma City with the money. After that, you want to contact the local DEQ office for an inspection of your vehicles or site. You can schedule that. So whatever office covers the county in which your business is located, that's the office that's going to do the inspections. Once the local office performs their inspection, they're going to fill out a form and they're going to file that away, and we'll obtain a copy of that inspection. And what we do is that we'll get that inspection and verify that all of the documents have been completed and put it all together. Now, if it's completed, then we'll issue the renewal license. If it's not, then we're going to send you a letter letting you know what needs to be completed. So that's the renewal process. So the thing to remember is that once you get the packet in the mail, look it over, make sure everything's right, and then get it sent back to Oklahoma City. So these are some examples of the forms. This is the renewal application. So this is going to have the information already filled out with what we have on file. Okay? So it's got a front page and a back page. The back page has all the vehicles on it. The invoice looks like this. The invoice is the document that you'll send your money in with, okay? So it's going to have on here, it's going to have all of your information. Then it's going to have all of the items for which you're being charged. So number of vehicles, land app sites, all of that, and then a total amount. So you'll take that and return it either with a check, or you could fill out the section at the bottom for the credit card. These are the disposal forms that you'll need to update and submit to us. And then if you have a land application site or storage facility or a treatment facility, you will need to get with the local DEQ office and verify the information that we have on file. So make sure that the drawing is still correct. Make sure that the supporting documentation that you have with it is still correct. And if all that's correct, then you don't have to do anything else with it. So the important thing is that you, once you get those documents from us, that you look over it, make sure everything's correct, and then send it back in to us. Now, part of renewing your license is documentation that you've received renewal training every 2 years. So in order to document that you viewed this approved renewal training course, please write down the following training code and the date you viewed the presentation and put it on your renewal application. The training code is this. So this is the training code that you will use to document your viewing of this presentation. And you're going to take this training code and write it down and put it on the application that you receive along with the date that you watched this. So here is the application that you receive, and I want you to take that code and write it right here on the middle of the form, because that's a place that's easy for us to see, and it's got plenty of area on there for you to enter that code. So take that training code, enter it into this section along with the date that you viewed the presentation. Should you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. For the Onsite program section, you may contact Janet Zotai, the administrative assistant for this section. Her phone number and email address are listed. The program manager for this section is Matt Pace. His contact information is also there. And if you would like to contact the local DEQ office, you may do so by accessing the link provided. And this link will take you to our website. And on this website, you simply click on the office that you want, in which you are located, and it will tell you what local office covers that area and provide you with the contact information. For any questions, feel free to give us a call or contact your local DEQ office. Otherwise, that completes this renewal workshop. Thank you. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I hope that it was a better way to fit in your schedule without interrupting your business day. Again, feel free to contact me directly if you have any questions. My contact information is going to be located on the screen. You may ask me any questions about this presentation, other things that we may not have covered, or suggestions to improve this training. I would love to hear from you. So we appreciate any input that you may have. Thanks.